everyone. Welcome to my new podcast that I will be having for this week's assignment. And I decided to name my podcast Let's Talk Sterile because I think it's very fitting and it has a nice ring to it. I hope everyone's doing well. They're having a great day. My day's been alright. Just working on these assignments. And for this assignment, I have to do a podcast. Now, for this podcast, I wanted to focus this episode on the robotics and essentially the costs that we have for them, the training, just how sustainable it is as well. I had a little bit of research that I did today to discuss my thoughts on this topic, and after doing some research, the topic that I wanted to talk about first is the sustainability that robotic instruments have in the healthcare field, and if they are better or worse or equal to the laparoscopic surgeries. And for my research, I went and found a journal on the Oxford Academy site, and essentially it talks about the sustainability that robotic instruments and laparoscopic surgeries have on the environment. And from reading this article, I found that the conclusion states that they studied 16 cases, and from those they determined that robotic surgeries made up to 43.5% higher greenhouse gas emissions than laparoscopic surgeries. And to me, that seemed like very high. That's just super interesting to think about, of the higher percentage that this has. And I also found that there was a 24% higher waste in robotic surgeries than laparoscopic surgeries. And I feel for sustainability, it's hard to have a higher waste. And we should be working and focusing on trying to keep emissions down, considering all of the climate effects that are happening as of today, just with the fires, hurricanes that shouldn't be happening right now, that aren't typically happening during this time of year. But where am I at? Yeah, from doing the research and finding out those statistics from that site, it was just so interesting for me to read that and really see the two compare and what differences they make. Of course, the robotic surgeries are something that are becoming more common and we'll be seeing a lot more of in upcoming future surgeries and procedures that are being taken place in the healthcare facilities. And I do believe that robotic instruments and robotic devices play a really big role in patient care and what we can see for the future and how it'll hold a difference in the outcome of these surgeries that we're seeing. But from this article, the big difference in the surgical field is it does produce a larger waste than we're used to seeing with laparoscopic surgeries. And I wonder what kind of environmental outcomes this could possibly pose for the future as robotics in the healthcare system grow and become regular. And one of the big questions I have is how we might tackle this challenge when it comes to the sustainability of these instruments. The healthcare has a high emission cost and a high emission waste that we already see with disposable items in the healthcare system. And that's just one of my main concerns in to be honest, I couldn't really find a solution for this. It's just we have to keep practicing what we do now with how we get rid of our waste and how we reuse it. I think hopefully in the future we find more helpful ways to take control of this waste that we see happening all the time from disposable instruments and tools. And yeah, that was just really interesting to me. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next topic and what we have here, which is the cost of robotic procedures. And it didn't take me quite a bit to find what I needed to and what I wanted to look for specifically. And I found this site called JAMA Network. And what I really wanted to see was the cost of how much each procedure is using robotic instruments and devices. And from what I found is about that $1,866 is used per procedure just for the use of the robotic instruments. Just the robotic instruments, which is like, it's expensive in my opinion. And about another $1,700 per procedure for the maintenance of these robotic instruments. And with that added up, it's around $3,000 per procedure. And this is without totaling in the expense of the labor that is being done and the surgery, like the type of certain surgery that's being performed, because each surgery costs a different amount with the different tools being used. So that was really interesting to read and surprising that just that amount is already there from the robotic instruments. And I wanted to just I can't really find a solution for lowering the costs. Hopefully in the future, we'll see the cost of robotic instruments and procedures go down with the more commonly they are used. I think that would be probably the best solution that I can think of, honestly. But yeah, the JAMA Network site, it really goes in depth about the cost and what we see here with using robotic instruments in our procedures. But I also wanted to talk on the cost of buying the instruments and the cost of training our medical staff in using these instruments, and also how that cost will pile up for the facilities. And I found a site called the National Library of Medicine site. Yeah. And they talk of virtual reality, this was interesting to me to learn of virtual reality and learning how to use robotic instruments. I felt like it would be more hands-on, not virtual reality, but that's very interesting. I think it's a good way to go about it, because it also takes into account the futuristic side of things and how we as a species are advancing just by using virtual reality. But from what I gathered from this article, it states that $100,000 is used. $100,000 goes into using this training virtual reality device. And just thinking of how many people are going through this training and the cost of that, it's kind of mind-blowing of how much that is. And what's even more mind-blowing is the most popular device that we see used in the medical field today is the Da Vinci device. And the cost for this device is around $2 million. just for this device, not including the maintenance, the tools that come with it, all of that, just for the device. And that's just so shocking to see, honestly, the amount of money being put in and time being put into using robotic instruments and devices. So we can definitely see that it's not going anywhere. It's developing quickly. And I think that's a good thing. I think we should be moving towards the future and seeing how this all plays out. There's not really, I don't have to give a solution for this. It doesn't need a solution. It's just me stating the amount of money we're using and putting into these robotic instruments, which I think is a good thing. I believe we should be putting this amount in to hold future procedures in robotic surgery, because more information is coming out of how it's helpful and how we need it to advance in our society. But I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this podcast. It was very new for me to do, and I kind of want to continue with it, just doing this research on the side. And in my description, I will leave a list of references of the sites that I mentioned in here. And I hope you all have a really great day and you enjoyed listening to this podcast.